Hello, my friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Stephen Dalton. I'm an Irish storyteller, and it's my great privilege to be the voice that you listen to as you go to sleep tonight. Tonight, I continue my series about the Irish Countryvet. There is no need to have heard the first story. Each one stands on its own, and in this story, we continue to hear about the life of Michael, a country vet who lives in Ireland in the 1930s. He lives in a simpler time, in a rural place, and in tonight's story, Michael will dwell on some of the lessons he's learned over the years as a vet, and he'll visit a couple of farms and a horse stud. One small thing. If you'd like to support my work, you can do so on Patreon. The link is below this video. Okay, let's do the relaxation session now, which will take a few minutes before tonight's sleep story. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, or the floor, or whatever you lie upon tonight. And beneath all of that, feel the support of the earth, our home. Feel the constantness of it. Feel that you can let go a little more now as you become more and more aware of that deep support, that constant support. 9. You are safe. Allow my voice to be an anchor of safety tonight, to be a friend. Know that my voice will only ever take you to safe places. And with that knowledge, see if you can sink into this moment a little more now. Letting go a little more now. 8. Feel into your body. Where are you still holding? Maybe you feel pain. Maybe you feel tension. Perhaps in your feet, in your lower legs. Maybe in your belly, or in your chest, or in your hands, or arms, or maybe you're like me, and you hold the tension in your face. Wherever it is, just allow it to release now. 7. The day is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. Whatever thoughts you may be having, just recognize them as part of the condition of being human. They will always come and go. And as they arrive, they are not to be fought with or repelled. Welcome them. See them for what they are, and let them go, and watch them float away like leaves on a moonlit river, or clouds passing in a starlit sky. Six. This is your moment. This is your time. You have nowhere to go now. Nowhere to be. So allow that fact to bring you into this moment even more now. To let go even more now. Five. Perhaps begin to feel a little gratitude now. Gratitude for this moment. Gratitude for the simple things. The breath in your body. The shelter you have tonight. The people that mean something to you. The simple things. 4. Peace lives within you. It is always there, waiting to be found, waiting to be felt. It is your constant friend. See if you can feel that peace tonight. See if you can find it. 3. Begin to engage with your imagination now. Imagine a landscape unlike most others. The beautiful county of Kerry in the southwest of Ireland. A land that goes from green walled fields to mountains to wild Atlantic Ocean. A land far away from all that you know. 2. Checking in with your body one more time now. Your body has worked hard for you today. It's time to give it rest. And 1. Completely letting go now. as I tell you tonight's sleep story. The car rested by the side of a narrow, quiet lane, its dark frame blending with the muted tones of the morning. Michael O'Shaughnessy stood a few paces away, his hands tucked deep into the pockets of his long coat. The ground beneath his boots was soft from yesterday's rain, and a faint sheen of moisture lingered on the grasses that rolled gently away toward the sea. Ahead, the horizon blurred where the ocean met the sky. The waters stretched out, vast and silver, rippling under the weight of low-hanging clouds. Far out, barely distinguishable through the gathering mist, Skellig Michael, a magnificent rock, rose like a thought not fully formed. Its jagged edges, softened by distance, it seemed to hover between this world and some other place. Its presence, neither loud nor demanding, yet impossible to ignore. The mist was moving closer now, quiet and deliberate, rolling in across the fields and settling over the hedgerows like a veil. Michael watched it come, the kind of mist that didn't rush but filled the space around it with the unhurried patience of time. A dampness hung in the air, clinging to his coat and settling in his hair. He could feel the faintest trace of rain beginning to fall. A fine drizzle that seemed like it might increase in a short time. Standing there, Michael let the stillness take hold. These moments, away from the chatter of people and the low calls of animals, had always brought him clarity. He thought of the long road that had brought him here, not just the road to Kerry, but the one that had led him to this life of quiet, steady work. He thought of the farmers he'd visited, their hands rough from years in the soil, their gratitude quiet but sincere. He thought of the animals too, and the strange lessons they'd taught him, without ever speaking a word. A sick calf could teach perseverance, An old sheep, nearing the end of its days, could teach dignity. The rain grew steadier, a gentle patter now against the roof of the car and the brim of his hat. It had filled the air with its rhythm, mingling with the sound of distant waves reaching the shore. Michael breathed in deeply, the scent of wet earth and sea salt grounding him. He turned his gaze back to Skellig Michael, now almost hidden in the thickening mist, and thought of the monks who had once made their home there. What must it have been like to live in that kind of solitude, surrounded by the endless ocean, the wind, and the rain? What truths had they found out there on the edge of the world? Michael shifted his weight slightly, his boots pressing into the softened ground. There was so much he didn't understand about life, about the patterns that seemed to emerge only in hindsight. And yet, he felt certain there was a kind of wisdom in this land, in its constancy and its quiet unfolding. As he stood there, the rain falling steadily now, he thought not of the answers, but of the questions, and how they seemed to stretch out as endlessly as the sea. Now he turned and got into his car. He opened the door with a gentle creak, the familiar scent of leather and engine oil welcoming him as he slid into the driver's seat. He started the car. The hum of the engine merging with the patter of rain. His first call of the day was to be the Donahue farm, just a few miles down the road. The Donahues had sent word a day prior. A young cow was struggling to calve, and they'd done all they could without help. Michael knew the farm well, its fields marked by weathered, dry stone walls, its barn leaning slightly to one side from years of battles with the coastal winds. The family had always been warm and straightforward. They were a part of this land, them and their ancestor. Michael pulled into the farmyard. The familiar sight of the stone farmhouse emerging through the mist. The gravel crunched beneath the car's tires as he parked and stepped out, tipping his hat against the drizzle. Liam Donahue was already waiting, his cap pulled low over his face, his boots caked with mud. "Morning, Michael," Liam said. "He's in the barn. Been at it since the early hours." Michael nodded, following Liam across the yard, his boots squelching in the soft ground. Inside the barn, the air was warm and thick, smelling of hay and animals. The cow lay in the straw, her sides heaving with the effort of labor. Michael set his bag down gently and crouched beside her, his voice low and soothing as he spoke to her and assessed the situation. "Good girl now. Let's have a look," he murmured, his hands steady and practiced. Years of experience had taught him how to move slowly, to let the animal feel his presence without fear. He worked carefully, talking quietly to Liam as he explained what needed to be done. The process was delicate but straightforward, and within the hour the calf was delivered. A sturdy little bull, blinking against the light of the barn as he took his first breaths. The cow let out a low, relieved sound, and Michael smiled faintly, stepping back to let her nuzzle her newborn. "He's a strong one, that cow of yours," Michael said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "He'll be right as rain in no time." Liam let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. "Thank you, Michael. Don't know what we'd do without you." Michael waved off the gratitude with a small nod, stepping back into the rain-scented air of the farmyard. As he packed his bag into the car, he thought again of the small but significant moments his work offered, the quiet victories, the steady reminders of life's resilience. He started the car and got on his way, waving goodbye to Liam as he went. The next stop on Michael O'Shaughnessy's route was the Nolan farm, a modest patch of land tucked away behind a cluster of old sycamore trees. He had been called out to see a lame sheep that had been favoring one leg since the week before. The Nolans were a curious pair, in the best sense. Mary and Brendan, husband and wife, who worked the land together as equals. It was uncommon, perhaps, at the time, but it suited them, and Michael had always admired their quiet harmony. As he pulled into the farmyard, Mary was already there to greet him, brushing her hands on her apron and waving him down with a smile. Brendan followed a few moments later, carrying a thick, weathered stick that he used to herd the sheep. Their flock was small but well cared for, and Michael had no doubt that this particular animal had been treated with patience and care in the days before his arrival. "She's in the lower pen," Brendan said, as they walked towards the barn, Mary falling into step beside them. "I reckon it's her hoof. Something stuck, maybe, or a bit of rot." Inside the pen, the ewe stood quietly in the straw, one leg lifted delicately off the ground. Mary moved quickly and calmly, holding the animal steady, as Michael crouched down to examine her. His fingers moved with care, parting the wool and checking each hoof with practiced ease. Sure enough, a small sharp stone was lodged in the tissue, causing the animal pain. "Nothing serious," Michael said, reaching into his bag for the tools he needed. "We'll get this sorted, and she'll be back to her old self soon enough." With Mary keeping the ewe calm, and Brendan shining a lantern for better light, Michael removed the stone and treated the tender area with an ointment to ward off infection. The work was quick and unremarkable in its simplicity, but there was something satisfying in the quiet teamwork of it all. The shared focus of 3 people and 1 sheep, each doing their part. Once the job was done, Mary gave the ewe a gentle pat, and Brendan grinned, his weathered face breaking into lines of relief. "You've done it again, Michael. Won't take her long to recover, will it?" "Not at all," Michael replied. standing and brushing the straw from his trousers. Just keep her dry for a day or two, and she'll be fine. As they left the barn, Mary reached out and touched his arm lightly. "You'll stay for tea, won't you? I've just taken a cake out of the oven." Michael hesitated for a moment. It was still early. There was another call to make. But the smell of baking bread and the fact that it was raining so much tipped the decision. "A slice of cake sounds grand," he said with a smile. Inside the house, the fire crackled warmly in the hearth. Michael took a seat at the wooden table as Mary cut generous slices of fruit cake, the kind made dense with raisins and a hint of spice. Brendan poured tea from a battered metal pot, the steam curling upward as the rain continued to fall outside. The conversation turned easily to the happenings of the locality. Mary spoke of the markets in town, how the price of feed had risen, and how Mrs. Walsh's eldest son had come back from America with newfangled ideas about farming. Brendan chimed in with news of a neighbour's bull, which had jumped a fence and caused a bit of chaos before being coaxed back to its field. "And did you hear about young Aisling at the schoolhouse?" Mary asked, setting her teacup down. "She's off to Dublin next month. Her uncle's got her a place at one of those training colleges." Michael nodded, listening with genuine interest. These small pieces of news, the births, the plans, the troubles, were all things that bound the people of this place. It was moments like these, over tea and cake, that Michael truly valued. When the rain eased, Michael finally stood, thanking them both for their hospitality. Mary handed him a small tin with an extra slice of cake for the road, and Brendan saw him to the door, clapping him on the shoulder as he left. "Safe travels, Michael," Brendan called as he stepped back into the kitchen. Michael returned to his car, warmed not just by the tea and cake, but by the quiet kindness of the Nolans and the stories they had shared. As he turned the engine over and drove away, he felt a deep contentment within him. Michael's final call of the day took him to a place that always felt a little out of the ordinary. nestled in a hollow beyond a winding stretch of road, was Dunbar Stud, a small but respected horse breeding farm that catered to the needs of the wealthy landowners in the region. Though Michael had visited many times before, the place always held a quiet sense of importance. There was something so wise about the horses here, something that Michael could never put his finger on. He arrived at the gates, which were painted a deep green and already open. He drove slowly up the gravel path, passing a long row of paddocks where the horses stood grazing despite the damp. He parked near the main stable, stepping out into the earthy scent of wet hay and damp leather. There he was greeted by Seamus Kilroy, the stud's manager. "Michael, good to see you," Seamus called. He was a tall, wiry man, with a sharp gaze that seemed to miss nothing. "We've a mare in the foaling barn that's giving us a bit of trouble. Won't let the colt feed properly." Michael nodded, following Seamus toward the barn. The structure was grander than most stables he visited, with thick beams and wide doors. But the work inside was the same, practical and earthy, with no room for airs. Inside, the mare stood in a large stall, her coat gleaming even in the low light. The colt, just a few days old, stood at her side, his spindly legs trembling slightly as he shifted his weight. "She's protective, more than usual," Seamus explained, keeping his voice low as they approached. "Doesn't want anyone near him, not even me. But he's not getting what he needs." Michael observed the mare for a moment, noting the way her ears twitched and her eyes followed their every movement. Protective indeed. He stepped closer with deliberate calm, speaking softly, his tone as much for her as it was for the people watching. "There now, girl. Let's have a look. You're doing your best, aren't you?" The mare didn't flinch as Michael crouched, his movements slow and measured. He reached for the colt, his hands steady, as he checked the young horse over. The issue was clear enough. The colt's mouth wasn't quite aligned, making it difficult for him to latch on to his mother. It was a minor problem, but one that could lead to trouble if not addressed quickly. Michael stood and turned to Seamus. We'll need to help him feed for now, just until he gets strong enough. I can show you how to guide him properly. Seamus nodded, already moving to fetch what was needed. Together, they worked carefully, Michael demonstrating the best way to support the colt and guide him to the mare. The mare remained watchful but calm, her instincts seeming to sense that they were there to help. When the colt finally began to suckle, Seamus let out a low breath of relief. There you go, lad, Seamus murmured. That's the way. They stayed a while longer to ensure the colt fed properly. The barn quiet, except for the sounds of the animals and the rain outside. When the work was done, Seamus shook Michael's hand firmly. Appreciate it, Michael, he said. That one's going to be something special. I can feel it. Michael gave a small smile, glancing back at the mare and her foal before gathering his bag. Every one of them is special in their own way, but I'll admit, he's got a fine start. As he left the barn, Seamus walked him back to the car. The stud felt peaceful in this rain. The horses grazing quietly in their paddocks, and Michael paused for a moment before opening the car door. Drive safe, Seamus said, tipping his cap. And let's hope we don't need you back too soon. Michael chuckled. Let's hope not, but you know where to find me. He drove away slowly, the road slick with rain, and the light over the countryside moving towards dusk. The day had been long, but as the familiar rhythm of the engine and the rain surrounded him, Michael felt that quiet sense of purpose once again, the kind that came from knowing his work meant something, not just to the people, but to the creatures that shared this land with them. The house was warm when Michael arrived home. The soft glow of the fire spilling out into the hallway as he hung his coat by the door. The rain had followed him all the way, but now, inside, its steady rhythm against the windows seemed a distant, muted, and comforting thing. Moira was in the living room, her knitting resting in her lap as she looked up with a smile. "Long day?" she asked, her voice as familiar and soothing as the crackle of the fire. "Aye," Michael said, crossing the room to sit in his usual chair. "But a good one." She nodded, the kind of nod that spoke of years shared and words unspoken. Michael leaned back, his boots kicked off, and his legs stretched toward the warmth of the hearth. The room fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the pop of the fire and Moira knitting. They sat in silence now, the firelight flickering across the room. Michael closed his eyes, listening to the rain outside and feeling the quiet satisfaction of another day well spent. There was no need for conversation, just the peaceful solitude of two lives lived together, two lives in deep contentment with one another. Another day finished in the life of the Irish Countryvet.